Have you ever met someone so captivating, they felt like they stepped right out of a romance novel? That kind of person who shows up on a gray day and, like magic, transforms everything around them. That's exactly how Valeria felt when Adrian crossed her path, a well-mannered, mysterious man with a smile that blended charm and secrecy. But what started out like a fairy tale soon spiraled into a dark abyss where love teeters on the edge of madness, and danger lurks behind every gesture that feels just a little too sweet. How many times do we idealize someone so much that we ignore the signs? You know that something's off feeling we get but choose to call intensity? Yeah. In this story, every disappearance, every silence, every cryptic look was really an invitation into a world that defied logic. And by the time Valeria realized it, it was already too late. Jealousy, emotional pain, and supernatural secrets closed in around her like a twisted dance between reality and insanity. This isn't just another love story, it's a plunge into psychological horror, invisible manipulation, and the kind of trauma that grows from loving someone who might not even be human. So get ready to uncover a mysterious encounter where the supernatural not only exists but feeds on the very thing that breaks us from the inside out. Are you ready to question your own sanity? Because from this point on, everything that seems real might just be a distorted reflection in the mirror of a dangerous love. And the worst part? You might have lived something just like it without even realizing. Valeria met Adrian on a rainy afternoon, the kind that feels straight out of a noir film. She had forgotten her umbrella, and he, like an unlikely gentleman, offered his with a smile that seemed to hide more than it revealed. Their conversation flowed easily, as if they'd known each other forever. But there was something off about him, a subtle unease, like he didn't quite belong to that place or that time. As he spoke, his eyes wandered, lost in memories too heavy to carry. And Valeria, without knowing why, felt a chill down her spine, and it wasn't just from the rain. In the days that followed, the enchantment grew. Adrian was thoughtful, intelligent, and dangerously seductive, almost too perfect to be real. But then the oddities began. He had no social media. He avoided meeting her friends. He never spoke about his family. It was as if he didn't exist before her. At first, Valeria thought it was romantic, almost mystical. But soon, the mystery turned into distrust. He would disappear for days without a word, returning with vague excuses and eyes darker than before. One time, she asked where he'd been, and he simply said, "I needed to feed on solitude." Was it poetry? A metaphor? Or a confession? His isolation became a wall she could never break through. Adrian seemed to exist outside of time, like an echo from another era. He disliked mirrors, avoided photos, and had an odd obsession with ancient books, especially ones about emotional pain and human suffering. Valeria started noticing a pattern. Every time she cried, every time she broke down, he got closer, more intense, almost euphoric. It was as if her sadness nourished him. And yet, despite all the warning signs, she couldn't walk away. There was something addictive about him, like he always knew exactly what to say, even if it hurt. Their dark romance felt like a custom-built trap. He offered comfort, but created the pain. Their first kiss tasted like torment and pleasure all at once. It was a mysterious connection, but also the start of something dangerously close to psychological terror. Over time, Valeria's enchantment morphed into unease. His constant disappearances and vague explanations stirred something corrosive inside her. Jealousy. Not the kind you feel in a new relationship, but a growing obsession. She started analyzing every text, every delay, every mood shift. Love was turning into a prison, and she was the one building the bars. Worried friends and suspicious family pushed her to take action. Valeria secretly installed a tracking app on his phone, disguised as a system update. She followed him on nights he said he had personal matters to resolve. And what she saw only made things worse. Adrian wandering through cemeteries, forests, deserted streets as if searching for something or someone. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was delusion. Her mind became a maze of fear and paranoia. Was he cheating? A criminal? Or worse, an emotional predator who fed on people's fragility? Every answer brought more questions. The psychological suffering grew. Adrian's subtle manipulation, always making her feel like everything was her fault, tangled her deeper in his web. She lost her appetite, her sleep, her peace. One night, she stared at a dark window for hours, convinced he was watching from the shadows. Even when he wasn't around, his presence lingered like smoke, or a ghost. The trauma was settling in, and Valeria no longer knew if she felt love, rage, or just pure psychological terror. Adrian, meanwhile, seemed more distant than ever. His touch turned cold. His voice, quieter. His eyes empty. He avoided bright places, acted as if the world around him didn't exist. And then, it clicked, maybe the problem wasn't another woman, but another nature. Something about him wasn't human. And that's when she began to understand the real enemy wasn't jealousy. It was a secret buried far, far deeper. It was on a cold, fog-drenched night in the forest that Adrian finally dropped the mask. Valeria, exhausted from the lies, demanded answers. He hesitated, then whispered, "I'm not what you think I am." The confession hit like a punch. He wasn't human. He was a mortal, a vampire who didn't feed on blood but on emotional pain. Valeria laughed, thinking it was just another twisted metaphor. But his eyes said otherwise. Adrian explained he had lived for centuries, sustained by human suffering, tears, trauma, delusions. He had loved others before her, but never as deeply. That's why he resisted consuming her entirely. "Your pain kills me," he murmured, "but it also keeps me alive." She didn't know what was worse. Finding out she was in love with a modern-day vampire, or realizing that her pain was his fuel. Every tear, every breakdown, every jealous episode had been a feast for Adrian. Their romance was a toxic cycle. She suffered, and he thrived. But in a twisted way, he seemed to suffer too. He claimed to hate what he was, that he had no choice. He spoke of murders in the past, disappearances caused by his nature. And with each detail, Valeria stood face-to-face with a supernatural being. And a broken man. Was it pain in his eyes? Or just another layer of manipulation? Even in fear, she couldn't leave. There was something in his honesty, or maybe a centuries-old illusion, that kept her tethered. It was a dangerous love. A bond between victim and predator. A tie sealed by suffering and secrets, laced with equal parts desire and disgust. Valeria didn't know if she wanted to save him or run forever. And in that dark forest, a new chapter of horror was just beginning. She tried to pull away. But Adrian showed up in dreams, in shadows, in warped reflections. His presence haunted her, even when he wasn't physically there. Until one night, in complete silence, he returned. The attack was swift, violent. A hug that turned into a grip. A kiss that cut to the soul. And then emptiness. She woke up alone. Clothes torn. Strange marks on her body, marks no exam could explain. She went to the police, frantic. But there were no records. No witnesses. No trace of Adrian. As if had never existed. Authorities treated her with skepticism. Friends looked at her with pity. And Valeria began to question her sanity. Emotional pain bloomed like a weed. Every memory hit like a punch. Every thought was a knot in her throat. Determined to understand, she started digging. Through archives, old records, reports of strange disappearances. And what she found shocked her. Since the 19th century, different names but the same face had appeared in faded photos and tragic stories. Adrian was a secret buried in time. And worse, every woman connected to him was diagnosed with delusions, psychotic breaks, or committed to psychiatric hospitals. He left behind a trail of trauma and confusion. A cruel pattern. Valeria realized she might just be another one. Her sense of isolation deepened. She trusted no one. The words murder, manipulation, and supernatural blurred together in her mind. Was Adrian real? Or was she a fragile woman, slipping into madness? The thread of that cursed love remained even in his absence. She knew. Either she'd uncover the truth, or lose herself completely. Eventually, Valeria was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after a nervous breakdown. She drifted between deep silence and frantic episodes where she screamed his name. Doctors spoke of severe trauma, of dissociation, of psychotic episodes caused by extreme stress. But she couldn't believe it had all been in her head. She could still feel his touch, and the cold it carried. During therapy, memories came in scattered flashes. His smile, the forest, the emotional agony that seemed to grow whenever they were together. She began to doubt her own mind. Had she imagined everything? Created a dark fantasy to escape loneliness? Or had she truly fallen in love with an immortal creature that fed on suffering? The hospital felt suffocating. The lights flickered, like they were mocking her. Other patients mumbled strange things, names, dates, stories of love and pain. She wondered. Had Adrian been here before? The line between reality and delusion kept thinning. Anything could be true. Or the creation of a shattered mind. When the medications were reduced, something strange happened. Adrian appeared again. Not as a memory, but right there. Sitting in the armchair of room 218. As if he had never left. "You're beautiful even in ruins," he said, with that voice full of charm and poison. She blinked and he vanished. Was it an hallucination from chemical withdrawal? Or proof that the supernatural doesn't vanish with pills? But what haunted her most wasn't fear. It was doubt. The ambiguity between what was real and what wasn't started eating away at her identity. Was she a victim? A co-conspirator? A brilliant mind that broke under the weight of too much love? The psychiatric hospital became both a shelter and a cage. And within its walls, Valeria had to choose. Try to forget. Or keep chasing answers that might destroy her. As time passed, she began piecing together fragments of her story. But nothing fit neatly. What was memory and what was madness? The moments with Adrian were vivid, almost too vivid. Some doctors said she had a rare affective disorder with paranoid delusions. Others believed she'd been expertly manipulated. But what if both were true? The mystery of Adrian took on a life of its own. Every new clue a misplaced object, an old name in a medical record, a familiar story from another patient only deepened the doubt. Maybe he was a modern vampire, feeding on sorrow. Maybe his immortality was sustained by an endless cycle of pain and passion. Or maybe he was just a master manipulator, a psychological predator disguised as a dream. Valeria began writing everything down. In hidden notebooks, she recorded every memory, every theory, every emotion. It was her way of staying anchored to reality, or what was left of it. The notes didn't offer conclusions. but they raised unsettling questions. How do you explain so many disappearances? How do you ignore the supernatural intensity of that love? The line between madness and clarity is thinner than we think. Valeria felt it with every visit, every dose, every sleepless night. And Adrian? Well, he still showed up sometimes. Sitting at the foot of her bed, whispering sweet words that burned like fire. Was it a delusion? Or was he really there, laughing at the doubt he planted in her mind like a curse? In the end, there are no clear answers. Maybe Adrian was a vampire. Maybe a killer. Maybe just a projection of wounds Valeria never wanted to face. But one thing is certain. Love can be the most beautiful and the most dangerous thing in the world. Because when we over-idealize someone, we risk loving not who they are, but who our desperate, connection-starved mind invented to survive. And you? Have you ever idealized someone so much that you ignored every red flag? Sometimes, love isn't a blessing. It's a test. A mirror that reflects our deepest wounds, unresolved traumas, and the fragile line between truth and illusion. Valeria and Adrian's story isn't just about the supernatural. It's about the risk of falling too deep into someone who may never have truly been there. How many times have you asked yourself, is this love or an emotional prison cleverly disguised? Love should be intense, yes, but not at the cost of your sanity. If there's more pain than peace, more confusion than clarity, maybe it's time to look inward. Maybe the real vampire is in the expectations we feed. And healing begins the moment we wake up from the suffering. If this story made you think, if it touched something in you, if it made you whisper, "This feels a little too familiar," share it with someone who needs this subtle warning too. And of course, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us for more stories that blur the lines between the invisible, the emotional, and the human. Because honestly, who hasn't fallen for someone just a little too perfect to be real?